So today I'd
Yep.
like to welcome Didi and Armand, the founders of ChiSkills. It is a website and YouTube channel that offers courses, coaching, and podcasts on topics such as Qigong, Tai Chi, internal alchemy, and traditional nutrition and meditation. They describe themselves as two people who are passionate about sharing their knowledge and experience on the path to liberation. They've been practicing and teaching energy work for over 10 years and have studied with various masters from traditional traditions and are based in the Netherlands. Thank you once again for coming on the show.
Awesome. Thanks for having us.
Thank you.
You're welcome. So you guys have been involved in Hermetics and Tai Chi for 10 years or longer. Would you mind giving me a brief introduction of how you guys became involved in this?
Okay. You want to go first, or you want me to go first?
You go first.
Okay. So I stumbled on Tai Chi, I think in 2002. That's quite a long time already. It's been quite a time. I was a musician in those days, and I found, well, just to make it very brief, I found that my concentration was one day up, one day down. I was kind of in a mess at that time, and I was looking for something I sort of got to the point where I was like, I have to do something with me to improve myself as a human being, my concentration, etc. And in those times, my mom, she lived in England in that time. So that's the island next to Holland. It's very close, but it's separated by a sea. So I went on a holiday, and she had a new partner at that point, and he was a Tai Chi teacher. So I went with him in the city of York. He was teaching there, and I would go with him. I was like, wow, what is this? I was just fascinated. And coming back, I looked for it. He said it was a martial art. I couldn't recognize it in it, the way he taught it. I was like, I did karate when I was younger, but it didn't look like a martial art at all. But he sort of was convinced me it was. So I started looking around here, and it was just not available in the region I was living in at that moment. Then moving to The Hague, which is sort of where the government is here in Holland, I found a teacher who actually taught it in a martial way. So went studying with him, and never looked back. It was like I was 11 years straight into his training, very small class, traditional martial arts, Kung Tao based. With the Tai Chi influence, and that started off the whole journey until I even gave up my profession as being a professional drummer at that time, and went straight into that. And out of that, I came in. It started with martial arts, but I was looking for self-mastery right from the beginning. I was also so much interested in the Taoistic aspects of the training, and he knew a lot about that. He studied sinology, as we call it here. He spoke Chinese, although he was a Dutch guy. He also was a student of Christopher Schipper, a very famous Taoist man who passed away a couple of years ago. Wrote a very famous book, The Living Tao, The Living Religion, which is like a classic text, even internationally. So we had lots of talks about Taoism, and that led from one step to the other. So the martial arts were great, fine, perfect, but I was always looking for the deeper stuff. What's underneath? Where can this lead to if I just keep following this path? And that led ultimately to Sifu Mark Rasmus, who's teaching Hermetics, because finding a Taoist master is going to be hard. You have to learn Chinese. You have to go to China or Taiwan, and Hermetics was just there. I was like, I looked at it, and I looked at some of Mark's stuff, and I was just convinced that would lead me to the next step, and which it did, and I'm still on that path. So yeah.
Brilliant. And Didi, would you like to share something?
Yeah, I think I always kind of was into things that were kind of physical. Like I did ballet when I was younger, and then yoga, and we met 21 years ago, and you were, yeah. It was just like, that was around the time that you got into Tai Chi, and I followed his path, but I was doing my own thing. And and I, of course, met his teacher and other students, and his teacher gave me the book, a book about 5 elements food, which I read, and I was really into that, and I started to study traditional Chinese medicine, but I was still on my yoga journey at that time. So then I think at a certain point when you went to Mark Rasmus, then something clicked, and I was like, now the energy part becomes part of it. And that really started our journey together. And of course, before that, he would share his knowledge, I would share my knowledge, but it was two separate paths. And actually, when Mark Rasmus came into the picture, that really blended our story.
Yeah.
And it really fell into place. And also my study of traditional Chinese medicine, I did the food part, I did herbs, and it kind of really blended together very nicely. So, and then both of us kind of, you now know a lot about this stuff, and I know about his training. So
it's an overlap thing.
Yeah.
You know, it's
So it's especially when the energy came in, it was just that that totally changed our whole story.
It made sense and locked everything in place.
Well, that's something I'd like to touch on, because I've noticed that people that I've been interviewing, Mark Rasmus has been an integral man in their journey.
Yeah.
Now, what was the fact that Mark was able to show you guys that made things click or really change the perspective from Tai Chi being a completely physical aspect to being more energetic?
Well, he has the framework in place. You know, he can lead you in a very short amount of time through a sort of a success path where he says, okay, you know, this is the physical, this is what needs to happen in the physical, which even changes the Tai Chi directly to an internal thing, namely going from muscle tension into fascia work, you know. So, and it makes sense. I had been training for years and years without ever feeling convinced, like, am I doing it correctly? You know, I was like, yeah, you have to relax and stuff. He could make that clear immediately. It's like, you do this like this, and then, you know, he's got this things like, okay, the next step is the vital level, so let's tune into vital energy, make that clear. Now, okay, we transform that into chi. So he's got the framework, and because of all the work I already did before, it clicked so quickly. It was like I could just connect the dots, I could fill in everything, and everything was like, okay, this makes total sense. And also, he gave me and us a model to teach with at the same time, right? So, and I guess that's his endeavor, is making it as simple as we can. Simple, you know, but simple, relatively simple, but. And then you have a thing that can apply to anything. So it doesn't only apply to Tai Chi. It applies to, you know, any sport. Could be, you know, it also applies to life. You know,
especially
because life starts making sense, right? It's all exploring beyond the physical, and he has an excellent way of doing that, and that's why. You know, if you start digging a little bit, like you did yourself, you stumbled upon him at some point, maybe on YouTube or whatever, and you're going to see that lots of people who are now teaching around the globe have studied with him.
Yes.
Right.
So I find that a lot of people have said that it's been the feeling and being able to experience it from Mark that actually it almost gives you a point of reference. You know what you need to be feeling and doing yourself.
Yeah.
That's it. That's it. I've been studying traditional Chinese medicine, and in every sentence they use qi, but they never give you the experience of qi.
Yes.
So it's a concept, it's a theory, but it's not something that you can touch upon. And then you go to this training, and now you have an entry into it. Now you have the feeling and the experience of qi.
Yeah.
And that makes you connect all the dots, and it makes you connect to everything around you. So if we're talking about 5 elements food, instead of looking at like a chart with all the foods and knowing what the kind of food does to your system, now I can experience it because I have the ability to tune into my energy field, to tune into my system. And now I don't have to look at the chart. Now I can just experience what it does.
Yeah.
So it's on all these different levels. It's yeah.
Yeah, and that's how I define Qigong as well. The Qigong is the ability to tune in all these frequencies like that, right?
Yeah.
So, and that's his thing. That's what he's teaching. And then it's like, okay, you figure it out how you can apply that to what you do, right? Being a martial artist or being a healer or being he teaches teachers mainly. That's his focus. So we had a group in last week, 5-day workshop. People come in. Some people don't have any experience yet, and in day 3 they experienced Qi. That took me like, I don't know, 12 years to experience it, right? So these people are grateful. They're like, and they realize it too. They're like, wait a minute, you guys have saved us years, and I think that's Mark Rasmus' strength, and that I think for all the people who are teaching his stuff, it spreads quickly now, and they can really differentiate. Because words, the words they use that they give us back for what they experience at the moment gives us, we know they have it, right?
Yeah.
And because
Yes.
they can differentiate between a vital energy and Qi, let's say, what is that difference? And they can feel it, they can describe it, and you see their eyebrows raised a little bit like, wow, and now they got it, and now we can sleep better, right? Because you know that they can work with that. They don't have to waste time. That's the whole thing.
So we say that what we're doing is we're adding an extra layer on top of this Tai Chi, of adding of intention through the mind, feeling and reproducing certain feelings that we have reference points for, and then we incorporate that feeling into our Tai Chi work, and then that forms the complete bubble.
Exactly. So the order of things should be: you first learn this, you first learn Qigong, you first learn this ascension path, you first learn all these frequencies, and you learn about the physical body, what is necessary, then you learn about the vital energy, you learn how to, all these things, Qi, mental stuff, you learn that, and now you start practicing Tai Chi. Now you start adding that into it, and now it starts making sense. And then or else you would have just empty form, which is nice for some people, I guess. I've also had students coming over, or people coming over, who just weren't open for it. They've been training longer for me than I did, and they're like, yeah, but that cannot be it. You just should be relaxing, and stuff. And I'm like, yeah, why not? If that's helping for you, maybe you have a stressful life and you just relax and you feel better, fine. But don't expect to make an ascent going up now. It's a totally different thing. So yeah.
Excellent. Now, Didi, you might be able to answer this one. How does the Hermetics practice and the 5 elements complement the Tai Chi and martial arts practice?
Well, it all starts with the question like, why do you practice? What is it? What attracts you to this training? So for me, it's not the training. It's like, okay, what do I want? Oh, and not what do I want from life? That's the wrong question. What does life want from me? And when you're open, when you can have a system that has flow and the energy going through, now you can be open for that what wants to come through you, instead of being disconnected from life. So it's about much bigger questions in this training. It's and of course, when you start this training, it's like, maybe it's very physical. Maybe it's something like, I want to be more fit, or I want to, whatever your reason is, or I want to relax more, or but when you go into this training and you really go deeper into it and you're open to it, then it's life-changing. It's and so then everything connects to each other, everything builds up on if your food is lousy, then you cannot have an open system, because there's all the stagnation happening in your system. If your physical is closed off, you cannot have an open system. So it's all building up on each other. Yeah.
Awesome. And
Yeah.
as a couple working Hermetics and sort of complementary practices, how have you found that helps your relationship, and just with just general things in life, having this this Hermetic framework and these consistent beliefs that you both believe in?
Wow. That's interesting. Yeah.
Okay. Well, I think, the whole let's start that it makes it possible, because it needs to be possible, right, to grow together first. That's the first starting point. And I think when I first met her, I already recognized that in her. We weren't even training Hermetics yet, but I think somewhere it was already on the horizon, because we're just two people who are ever searching and ever want to, better ourselves, and we could just recognize that in ourselves. So she is not holding me back, I'm not holding her back, right? It's exactly the opposite. So that needs to be in place, that you are one of these, I think, lucky people who are willing to explore deeper and deeper. So, and that's what we've been doing ever since. So it only gets better. It's like your relationship keeps changing for the better, because we discover more, we grow together. If you grow together as a team, it's like 1 and 1 is 3, because you just go quicker. It's like, Didi brings in the food thing, and we start trying that, and we feel better, and now we feel better. We have more focus, more energy. There's better decision making. ChiSkills could not be what it is right now without us working on ourselves and leading the example, right? You cannot teach this stuff if you're not living it. So, and we definitely live it together, because we can stimulate each other. So when one of us is a little bit more down, we can help each other. It's like, it's so, yeah.
And I think we very much complement each other in ways like, I'm always looking for new things. I'm always like,
how about the human design?
Yeah, human design. Or I meet people and I'm like, this is interesting, and then I buy a book, and Armand is the one, like, after a while, I'm like, okay, now I know most of this. I go pretty deep, but now I know a lot. And then Armand picks it up and he brings it to the next level. So it's that,
Yep.
It's like this, and that's with other stuff. But I think the most important thing is that we don't hold each other back, and try to learn from each other as well.
So we don't know where we're next year, and that's great, and we just keep building, keep learning, keep developing, and also making decisions, life decisions that are not based on, the usual thing that you see mostly, where people just get sort of stuck in life. Okay, this is it, and we're always wide open to explore. Everything is fluid all the time, and
Now, someone that's interested in, because Hermetics is becoming more popular now, but relationship to Tai Chi really hasn't been popularized very much, except through Mark Rasmus. Now, someone that wants to get into Hermetics, and I believe that Mark practices Franz Barden's type of initiation to Hermetics. And where should someone start with that? Should they start with reading the book? Have you got any advice for someone looking in, where do I start in this Hermetic framework?
For sure, for sure. Okay, yeah, I love that question because it's an important one. Definitely read the book and read it cover to cover. It's not easy. It's not an easy book. It's not, it's not a novel. There's heavy theory in that. The first part is theory, then we go into the 10 steps of it, but just read through it, give yourself like 2 weeks to really go through it and then see what happens to you when you read it and journal along the way. I like to do that. Sometimes you just do that even in the book with a little pencil and then just like, or underline something that makes sense to you. Some stuff will not make sense at all, which is great and fine. And then when you read the book, and this is a very important thing, you have to understand one thing is that, and this is a really important thing, I say this all the time, this text is there to help you. It's not something that you have to, I'm going to say this, it's not a path that you have to do everything perfectly, etc., and then something happens. No, it's there to support you because you are already a master, right? This text is there for you to wake something up in you so that you can move ahead with yourself, right? So, and there's also a thing in the text, it's an older text, and there's all these, how you say that, securities in there. Like, okay, so if you have done an exercise, you first have to master the exercise, and now you have to do, then you're ready to do the next one. And now you master that one, you do the next one. That's not true. It's just a thing that in the times when this text was written, it was just written in there to make sure that people who are not really on an ethical path per se, they get stuck in the text and then they give up because
often people get stuck in the first chapter, just observing thoughts, just reading the fact that that's going to be difficult. We'll just continue and hope that we don't need to do that part.
Exactly. No, it's not. It's like so they give up, and then so this is something that Mark taught me quickly. He said, no, it's not like that at all. And next exercise is going to help the previous one, right? So that's you don't want people get demotivated, but you have to put this text in a certain time frame. I mean, this Franz Barton was living in the times he's been living during the Second World War, and he got sort of summoned by Hitler, and he needed to help build the Third Reich, that sort of stuff, which he refused. And there was also these things going on. But then going back to Prague, and in those days, the communists were there, and how free could he be? He was like, but he did want to write something. He did want to write some manual. So I think what Mark combines is that you read the text, but now it's also you have the added exercises or the approach that you can how do you work through this thing. But what I would advise people is learn Qigong first. First learn internal alchemy, because now you learn about, okay, so what's the physical plane? It starts making more sense. The vital energy, because if you're not introduced into Qigong yet and you learn about pore breathing, which is in the text, you're like, I don't know how to do that, that doesn't make any sense. But you can learn it in 30 minutes if you have like the right instruction. So that's the thing with the text. There's not all the instructions in there. So and then it can be nice theory and you can talk about it and etc. But it's not the practice. So first learn Qigong. That's also Mark's approach. That's the first thing. Learn the Qigong. Learn how to develop an elastic body. All that thing, because that's also in the text. And now you can start with, okay, so what's going on in the first chapter? And also, zooming out a little bit, you have to understand that the whole text is sort of separated in two parts. So the first half of the training, let's say step 1 to 5, is all about reaching equanimity and making sure you get rid of as much stagnation as you can out of the system. So there's more of a cleaning up approach. And then the other half is about Akasha and light training. So how can we become more of a light being after we've cleared a lot of the resistance out of our system? Doesn't mean you first do that for years and years and then learn Akasha and light. No, because Akasha and light training is going to help the first 5 steps as well. But those Akasha and light is already in the Qigong training. So you learn those first. Now you start applying the text and to the text, and And then I never went through it like in a linear way. It depends also on how you learn. So it's there to serve you. So out of experience, I know I'm not that linear in that way. I like to, okay, go deep with a certain exercise first and then do 100 hours of Akasha and then come back to that thing. But one thing I do recommend, and people have to understand that the very first exercise of the text is the most important one. And that's the mental training part, where you learn how to observe and not touch in any way and bring that into your life. Because without that single exercise, all the other stuff is not going to work. So you want to have that right from the bat is meditation.
Definitely. And how important do you believe that the mental house cleaning is, where looking at the mirror of your positive traits and negative traits? And this is another thing that I often find that people will just sort of, maybe it's not that important, and they'll just move on to the other parts.
Ouch, right? It's one of the most important exercises in the text. If you're not willing to look inside yourself and where you're holding on and in your patterns and your character, and there's not going to be any success in Hermetic training at all. I mean, we are all creators, and light is already working through us, and it's non-dual. So that means it's not choosing between right and wrong. You are the one to do that, right? So if you don't know yourself, how do you know? We are all conditioned animals, really. So we have to be willing to go inside and look deeply inside, and then be very honest. You have to be very honest with this training, and I understand it. It's a hard thing to do, and but ultimately, it's all about picking up the tiles and looking what's underneath, right? It's like, oh, wait a minute. Now you start cleaning, and now
But it's also, what's your motivation? Again, what's your motivation to do this? What do you want to get out of your practice, out of your training?
It's very personal.
Yeah.
And that can be a misnomer as well. As we read Initiation into Hermetics, and the goal is to become a magician. And often we think magic, that's quite far out, but we realize that the magic that we're creating is being able to create our own lives not through our past stories, but being able to create new opportunities from what is in front of us.
Absolutely.
Totally. Yeah, absolutely, Aaron. That's right on the money.
And I think, and magician, it's also how have we been brought up? Magician is something, magical. But if you look at life itself, in the world that you live, it's all magic. I mean, if you put a seed in the ground, a tree can come out. I mean, how magical is that? But we sometimes see it as something, that's explained. We learn about that in school, so now the magic is kind of gone away from it.
Oh, there's a black hole there, and the universe is endless, and so let's have another coffee, and let's work because we have to pay the taxes. So this whole training is also about moving beyond this physical plateau and exploring this metaphysical thing and reconnecting to this magic again, because like Didi says, it's already magic. It's a magic that you are actually here as a human being present in this incredible reality that you're in. But
I think for me, and I see with a lot of people who study with us, when you start to get into your energy body and you experience that you are energy instead of that you have energy or disconnected to that, and if you're just physical, if you know now that you have an energy body, and even with your mental body, that you can go so much further, if you're really aware of that, then you get that connection back. And I think we, like last week, we do tree training, train with a tree, and people are like, wow, that's also an energy being. I can feel the energy of the tree. I mean, sometimes we make jokes about tree huggers, but it's something that's it's real. I mean, you can feel the energy of any anything around you, especially when it's alive, then you can feel the energy. But if you can now understand that we're all connected, now you wake up in a new reality. And now there is something else going on, like, oh, questions start to change. Like, oh, we can shape our own future, and then it's mainly about wanting more, or well, maybe it's not the right questions that we're asking if we're disconnected.
Wow. Yeah.
So yeah.
So, Aaron, question from us to you. I mean,
Yeah.
what got you into the Hermetic side of things?
Yeah.
Because you've been a professional, I guess, fighter. You've been a
Yes.
champion, right? You're on that side of things, but also there's something drawing to this direction.
Correct. So I finished my kickboxing career in 2000, and then I was what I call a bit of martial arts shopping. Did a lot of martial arts, did a bit here and a bit here, and most of them I found that was going to take many years to master, and I'd already spent 15 to 20 years what I call mastering something else. And then through my fitness training and Russian kettlebells, I actually came across Russian Sistema. And at the time when I came across it about 2005, it was a very small website, a couple of clips that almost looked unreal. As you would see when people often see Aikido guys getting flipped around and they're just saying, he's just going with the flow. But there was just something in there that triggered my curiosity. So after learning Sistema and realizing that it's completely principle based, it is literally a Russian version of Tai Chi, focusing on breathing, form, relaxation, and movement. And then after doing that for a while, and I've always had that mystique with my Buddhist traditions, looking at Taoism and all these sort of things with what is Qi? What is this mysterious song? And so as starting to go down the rabbit hole, a friend of mine that I met in New Zealand, Phil Rice, said, you've got to check out this guy, Mark Rasmus. So I started checking out Mark, and I actually enrolled into his Vimeo course. At the same time, he was like, check out Didi and Armand's ChiSkills, a few other people. And it really just started to pique my interest when I first did the Qigong exercise.
Right. Okay.
Actually being able to feel what I was supposed to be feeling.
Right.
Nice.
Yeah, beautiful build-up. Yeah, and you stumbled upon this Hermetic thing, and I had the same thing. It was like, Hermetics, what is that? It was like, first I was like, it sounds modern even, right? Hermetics sounds technical or something. I don't know what. And then I digged into it. It's like, my goodness, this is awesome. So. But I think it's nice to see your roots and how you're moving towards that, and how that can lead up to the Hermetics, and becomes a path of more of self-mastery and reconnecting, like we're doing as well. With reconnecting, we mean is that through working through these different layers, plateaus, if you will, you start reconnecting again with the environment, right, that you're in, and we start cultivating space and stillness, and out of that, your whole reality starts to shift. And it's this shift we are looking for. So people get these ahas and like, oh, wait a minute, I am actually alive, right? I have choice. And coming back to the earlier question you said about the black and the white mirror thing, where you go really deep inside, it's like, that's just needed for that, because I think making it very simple is that we are human. We are humans. We are sort of museums of our own experiences. That creates contraction in our system. And Hermetic path is all about recognizing this stagnation, turning it around, and reconnect again and cultivate space. Because the whole problem with humanity now is that we're just disconnected. We're disconnected from everything, from ourselves, from other people, and that creates a big freaking mess at the moment. And that's good. The bigger the mess, the greater the chance of insight, and as long as we're living too comfortably in that, but now we're in chaos. So and that's a good thing, I think, because now people have the chance to to open up again and really look inside instead of pointing to everyone around them. And I'm sure the Hermetics coming into becoming more popular right now is because that's one of the very direct ways to really work on yourself with a really clear step-by-step approach to reach this mastery again. And then
I find that the Hermetics is a really good balance between the physical aspects of the Tai Chi and then the internal aspects of yourself. So the Hermetic path almost is a Western way of being able to go inside yourself and unlock your own resources and to discover more. And sometimes people may look at the Buddhist traditions and it looks a little bit too esoteric or Eastern for them, where this tradition is very simple. It's just close your eyes and start going inside and start examining yourself and then start working with different elements and different thought patterns.
Yeah, absolutely.
True. Yeah.
And I think that's exactly because actually there was the question you asked me before, difference between the 5 elements and Hermetics. I think the entrance is sometimes easier for people to go into. Chinese tradition is sometimes these poetic texts, and you kind of have to move through it a little bit. And with our perspective, our Western way of looking at it, it's sometimes not easy to interpret. Like, okay, what does it mean? It's beautiful with dragons and, but yeah.
Yeah, that's one
just
side
so
to it.
much that's lost in translation through the language barriers and just the amount of information that is contained in a Chinese character.
Absolutely.
Right. It's the same as like the difference between calling it chi or astral energy as it's done in Hermetics, and astral energy starts making more sense about
And it's such a different culture. I lived in Thailand for 1 year when I was 16 as an exchange student. And so I've lived with a family. I know a little bit about the Asian ways, as to say. But the way they look at, the way they look at the world, the way they, like, for example, I lived with a family who lived really up country, and with ghosts, I was brought up, ghosts don't exist. It's just a small example, but ghosts don't exist. And I live with this family, and they believe in ghosts, and everybody has seen ghosts. It's just, in what kind of reality do you live? My family in the Netherlands said ghosts don't exist, so we don't see them. Now I live with this family and they say, of course they believe, they are here, and we see them. Okay, so this is a different reality. But if you come from the one or the other, you will learn things differently as we look upon things differently.
Yeah, and another thing that's very important, I think, what really attracted me into Hermetics is that it's not based on any religion, right? It has nothing to do with that. So anyone from any religion can just train this. It's fine, And there's not this approach of like, so I first have to sweep your floor for 10 years and then you might introduce me in some aspect of the training. No, it's wide open right from the start. Yeah. I think Mark, as he's teaching and as we're teaching as well, we're so happy when people actually turn up and are willing to do this training, because we need people to bring this to the next generations, right? Yep. It's a living thing, but it's very approachable. It's very open door thing. If you're willing to explore this, if you're willing to train this, here you've got the material, and let's do this thing, right? Which is very different than when you go into the Taoistic thing where, of course, I mean, I don't say they're not open and they're teaching once you're in, but getting in is, I guess, is very hard. And
it's beautiful because, I love how when you are in this training, all the other stuff makes more sense. Yeah. So you start to, I'm really a big fan of 5 elements, but it starts to make more sense when you're also doing the other stuff. Now you're starting to understand, and it's all complementing each other. And if you read other books, you were talking about human design. If you read this, it's all about energy. Now it starts to make even more sense. It's all complementing each other.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Excellent.
Yeah, so it makes you wonder, what is Tai Chi then, and why would you train it, and where can it lead? What's the potential of it? What first could be like a nice relaxation thing, getting more in touch with yourself, might lead in a couple of years to just meditation things. And Tai Chi used to be much more martial art related. We all know that, right? And there's been a shift in the beginning of last century when the Boxers' Rebellion happened and that sort of stuff, that it became less popular. Why learn a martial art if you can buy a gun, right? Why bother? So I think the Taoistic thing became a little bit more important then, and they added more of that aspect to it. And I think that's a beautiful development. So, a lot of people, they start martial arts maybe from a thing of like, I live in a certain neighborhood, or I'm small, or I need more confidence for myself, or whatever. But at a certain point, if you continue it, it's like, who am I fighting really? But so instead of like, okay, I can take care of that thing, that side of things, maybe there's more to this. And so I think always when I was looking at older martial arts movies, growing up and things like that, there was always this, you saw a lot of this meditative aspects, or maybe a teacher saying some wise things to the student. I was like, and I was already open to that sort of thing. And that's also, you have to always see what's behind it. What's your motivation of doing things? Like Didi has been saying a couple of times already in this interview, it's like, but what do you want? What are you? And it's the same for the Hermetic path. And Hermetic path can support you in what you want. You might not know exactly clearly what you want yet, but there might be a direction already that you think in life, well, maybe think about, what is my purpose here? When you start waking up more and you feel vital energy, like, wait a minute, I'm alive, and wow, there's all these aspects to me. Where's this energy going? Where is it leading? And Hermetics can help you really find that purpose if you're just walking the path. Because if you start clearing resistance out of the system more and more and more, a good story starts telling itself, because your spirit is there. It's here for a reason. It wants to be here. It wants to come out, and then it will just start happening bit by bit. You're like, man, half a year ago I was there, now I'm here. I've made these decisions. I've been starting this stuff. And so don't get confused too much in all of the exercises that in Franz Barton's book per se. I would say pick out of the exercises also that really make sense to you right at this moment. Like, the meditation thing, go really deep in that. Live it also. Don't just meditate on your cushion. Make sure that if you do the first exercise, like observing the rising, falling way of thoughts, anything that your mind tends to touch or stick to, bring that into your life. You can practice everywhere. So you walk into the supermarket, observe, right? You talk to someone, observe, be still. You're with family, that's always a good challenge. It's like, keep observing, don't touch. And you start living it instead of it's a separate exercise and now we go back again. No. You start living it and build on that. And then, like I just said, a good story starts telling itself. That's the magic, I guess, because it's not about what you want per se. It's more about what life wants from you. And that transformation starts happening step by step. And that's just awesome. That's just incredible. I don't know what's happening in 3 months. I don't know, but we keep on going.
Yeah. Fantastic. Well, I'm going to have to leave it here, guys. But I'd like to thank you guys for sorry, I'm getting a bit of reverb there.
We don't hear it, but yeah.
That's right. So I'd just like to, if we can have another chat at another time, and we might be able to go into a little bit deeper of some of these aspects we've touched on.
We're very open to doing that. Let's spread the thing, and we can go more into detailed questions, etc. So yeah, man, thanks a lot for interviewing us, and it was our pleasure.